Hello, hello. Check, check, check. Good to have you all with us. We'll get rolling here in just a minute. Chris is super stoked. Oh, Jay Niblick, is that you? We're going to get your video also?
Yeah, it's just coming on mine here.
Oh, but that's a good headshot either way.
It's the kitchen. There we go.
There you are. Hello, beautiful.
Ta-da!
Hey, man, good to see you. How have you been?
You too. Good, man. Good.
Is that your
crazy
home office? Is that where you're at?
Yeah.
Okay.
A little stir crazy. Day 14 here in lockdown. You guys?
Well, Pennsylvania is completely shut down pretty much, right?
For the most part. There's some counties, outlying counties that are still minimally affected. You guys?
We are not fully shut down. Bars, restaurants, schools, shopping, that sort is. But we're still operating kind of as business per usual.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, whatever that means, however that goes.
Exactly.
We'll give just another minute here for some other attendees to join us, but we should have a nice packed house today. So it should be good. You bring in all the viewers, Jay. You're the hot topic.
All the crazies that come out of the woodwork when I'm around.
That's right.
You don't have any of those, though.
None at all. Yeah, we'll give it, let me check my time. Yeah, we're going to give it just like one more minute and then we'll go. We'll also have a lot of people we send this out to. We're seeing more and more people are signing up and not actually attending, which is bizarre. We have about 100 attendees that have signed up for this, but we get a lot of folks that don't attend because they just want to watch it in their own time. But I like watching live myself because then if you mess up, we wouldn't send it out, but I want to catch the mess up when it happens live.
Yeah, that's pretty common for us too.
Yeah.
A lot of people record, get the recording afterwards.
Yeah. Well, I'll get us rolling here. I know people are tuning in and watching already. So we will go ahead and get rolling. Hey, everyone. My name is Erik Hatch with Hatch Realty and Hatch Coaching based out of Fargo, North Dakota. Our real estate company and our real estate team are all one and the same, but we've been a top 50 real estate team now for the last 4 years, which is pretty fun, pretty awesome, especially in a place like Fargo, North Dakota. We opened up Hatch Coaching 4 years ago, really as a desire to influence the real estate industry. We saw a lot of people leading and doing things in the wrong way. They were chasing after transactions and they were chasing after cash and they weren't chasing after transformation. And we saw a great ability to impact that and influence that in the right sort of way with Hatch Coaching. So that's how it came to be. And so we started doing webinars and podcasts and all these things recently. And especially in a time like now, we want to bring as much value to people as possible. There's no asks, there's no sales pitches. All we want to do is to help educate some people and get them a little more teed up and ready to go for all this. So we asked my man, Jay Niblick, to join us today. Jay, what can you tell us about you?
Hey everybody, good to see you. Thanks for having me, Eric. Always love doing things with you. Cool, fun stuff. My name's Jay. I'm the co-founder of a company called WizeHire. And so we help small to medium-sized companies, and the vast majority of them are in real estate, and we help them find great talent. So there's a lot of things that are all rolled up into one shop as far as, the approach of how do you write a great job description and treat it as marketing? How do you blast it out to as many people as possible? And we integrate the disc and values profiles into that. So as applicants come in, we're assessing them and ranking them for you. So you know who's most likely got the best fit for the different jobs. Mm-hmm. And there's a bunch of other great services and awesome coaches over there that support coaches that help make sure you understand everything in the hiring space.
Mm-hmm. And Jay, is it fair to say that you might be the nation's expert on the disc profile? Are you like the lead dog?
There's a lot of them. But the version that we use, the disc and the values, are my versions. I'm the author of those. And I wrote those at another company I founded that's 20 years old now called Intermetrics. And so it's really the story behind WizeHire. Intermetrics is, I think we're like 1750, 1760 consultants around the globe in maybe 52 countries. And so there's like 10,000 corporate clients that we've worked with, 7 million some odd employees who have been profiled, but they work only through our consultants. So a lot of small and medium-sized businesses weren't going to bring in a $70,000 to $90,000 engagement to help them with a whole lot of aspects of management, development, strategic planning, and hiring. So mm-hmm. WizeHire came out and said, look, Sid was with me over at Intermetrics, and we said, there's this void here. How do we take this and help those individuals? And so the black box inside WizeHire was the first big creation at WizeHire. The artificial intelligence algorithms that literally assess the candidates against the benchmark and rank them, mm-hmm. like a coach or a consultant in a box.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you this, those of you that are watching, we've used WizeHire now as really the HR tool for Hatch Realty. It's the HR for HR is really what it is for us. And we use that now for probably 5+ years. And it is hands down the best tool for placing job ads, getting people to give and get their disc information, get their values, and it helps us to form a lot of our decisions. So Jay, thank you for providing an inexpensive tool for a schmuck like me.
Well, thank you for being a great client.
Yeah, man. Hey, let's dive in. And those of you that are watching live right now, please, in the chat bar, ask questions. We want this to be interactive and not just presentational. I'll be hopefully teeing Jay up with a number of questions that you are already sitting on, but ask questions. Jay, don't feel like you have to check that because I'll just be the facilitator of this here. Cool. And we'll go from there. But let me ask this before we dive in. What in the world is, like, how much importance should we put into the disc when it comes to hiring? Like, how much weight does the disc and the values, how much weight should that have in our hiring process? Because back when I used to, with another company and I learned about hiring, people, I was taught on disc for like hours, Jay. It was like hours and hours. And they're like, if the person's the right disc profile, hire them. It was terrible advice, right? So, yes. So how much emphasis should be put on the disc in terms of hiring?
There's two ratios. So one, the disc and the values, both are equal. We often hear that, wow, look at the disc profile on that person, hire them. The values, the 7 bars, it's a totally separate science, are just as important. Absolutely 50-50, because I can find somebody who has a great behavioral profile, but she has the completely wrong set of motivations. And so her engagement and her drive to go do these things doesn't fit. Okay. Can do it, isn't interested in. Vice versa, might find the exact same scenario, is really interested in wanting to become a professional singer, doesn't have the voice for it, or great voice singing to the baby, but has no desire for anybody else to hear her sing. So that's the first piece. They're absolutely equal. And then second, in the psychometric sense, from a American Psychological Association, APA guidelines, no assessment, any form or battery of assessment should ever be more than a third. And I'm probably backing that down to 25% of the entire scenario, maybe a quarter of the equation, because there's so many things that no instrument's ever going to measure that have to be understood. The hard skills, how they get along with you and the team, that's unique context to just you or whoever's hiring, that an assessment's never going to replace. So it's a huge critical mistake that we hear often, unfortunately, is, wow, this guy's a go for it. If you're in the world, we talked about this when we were last together live. If you're in the world of hire fast, fire fast, I see why people do that. But that, like your first piece of advice that you got, is also horrible advice. Hire fast, fire fast. It's not a good move. Hire slow. And whether it's up to you whether you fire slow or fire fast, but hire slow. And you guys do a great job, and you probably should go into it here, of just in addition to the 25% or even less, depending on everything else you do, you guys have a great process to suss out the rest of who that individual is and to really get to know them. And I think everybody can benefit from that.
Thanks. Yeah, the equation that we use is actually exactly what you said, not knowing that you're going to say it. Is we put about 25% of our decision-making process into the DISC and values, just to see if they're going to be the right fit. And Jay, I'm going to steal your example because it's my favorite one. And that is, if you are hiring somebody to work at a grocery store and their job is to place things on the top shelf, they need to be at least 6 feet tall. But a 5'10" person can be on their tiptoes the whole time and still do the job, but eventually their legs are going to give out and they naturally can't do that. And I'm probably slaughtering and butchering the example that you give, but really you want to hire a 6-foot person for a 6-foot job. And even though the 5'10" person can be on their tiptoes, it's not great for them and their energy. Am I capturing that?
Absolutely. And you're speaking to the adapted aspect of a DISC. And so people will do that too. That's, we're seeing it in today's situation. There's a million pundits out there that seem to think that they're experts and they'll give you all kinds of great advice. It's not. And that's a second most common one I think I see out there, is somebody says, you know what, you're looking for a D in this range, but their adapted hits that number. You look at the gray bar in our reports, the way we designed it, so they can pretend to be a 75D. So no big deal, go for it. And that's what you're talking about, is I can pretend to be 6 feet. I can adapt my body. But the two things we always say is the performance of that individual when they're adapting isn't the same caliber as a natural adaptation, a natural score. Like if you're pretending to be an 80C when you're doing your transaction coordination, even when you're pretending to be an 80C, you're still not as accurate and detailed as a natural, and you can't do it for long.
Yeah.
You're going to stop thinking about thinking, because that's what an adaptation is. I have to think about thinking.
Yeah.
And I can't do that all the time. And that's, you physically get exhausted at the end of the day.
Well, insightful, and we're gonna get very specific here. I want to at least finish the last thought that we were on. I had said 25% of our hiring decisions with Hatch Realty are reliant on the DISC and the values. 25% we categorize in terms of grit, tenacity. We love people that have a chip on their shoulders and some stars to change in their life. We love people who are they feel like they have something to prove. Those are exciting hires for us. There's a great book by Angela Duckworth called Grit, and it speaks of that drive that we're looking for. And then the other 50% we put on culture. We don't really put it on job skill or on experience. And that shows itself through culture and it shows itself through grit, but that's how we make our hiring decisions within our world. And it's again why we go slow, because we got to figure out the whole story. Anything to add to that, Jay, before we really dive into the DISC here?
I think it'd be great if you'd expand on the results. The way you guys do it and teach to do it, which, so that's cool because you walk the talk and you're living it. But compared to what we normally see out there with 9 out of 10 realtors failing to survive the first 2 weeks, massive turnover at teams that are, hiring fast and firing fast. Yeah. What's the success rate of your process?
Sure. I think you mean first 2 years, not first 2 weeks, but maybe.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, 2 years.
Since I started hiring by following these steps, we've never hired someone that hasn't still stayed in real estate, and almost all of them are still with us. And so we have 100% success rate for taking somebody who's never sold real estate before and turning them into a pretty great superstar. To be a top 50 real estate team has taken a lot of work, a lot of sacrifice, but really it was all just great hiring and then cultivating the right environment for great people. And so now we're at a place where we talk about something like the DISC all the time, Jay. It is centrifugal to our conversations because we need to understand who we are as individuals and who those other team members are so that we can create that right environment for them. So let's maybe break this down. And I know you have some slides and stuff prepared too. So why don't I have you teach us and learn us and give us all that great stuff of what we need to know. And then I'm going to interrupt you 1,000 times with questions.
That's okay. And let me know as it comes through if there's any other questions out there coming in on chat and things like that.
You got it.
And one of the things that popped into my head literally just last night is, do we want to expand the talk about DISC and values to not just hiring, but how they can use that knowledge in selling?
Tell us more.
Well, I mean, I'll just talk about it right now then. So, you know, like in poker, somebody's got to tell, you know, like there's that sign that they make when they know they've got a bad hand or a good hand, or there's an observable characteristic or trait that you can pick up on. And when you're playing poker, the old phrase is there's a tell, T-E-L-L, you know, and it's the guy who always touches his temple when he's got a great hand, or he always twitches his nose when he's got a bad hand, or, you know, there's millions of them. But if you're paying attention to that, then you can kind of get a feel for what's going on. Well, if I can start to understand DISC, which we can talk about today, and we'll talk a little more about the model and the theory behind it, just enough to, so for anybody that's not familiar with it, but not an in-depth, you know, exploration into it. If I understand that and I start thinking about how do I use that when I'm trying to sell to somebody, if I understand what their DISC behavior is, how differently should I approach them? For example, if I know I'm talking to, I think at least even just a DI, then I've got to be a lot more direct. I can not dive into the details as much. I need to stay at a 30,000 foot level, those kind of things. If you want, I can even show you on screen here a little bit. You all right with that?
Yeah, please.
Everybody see that?
Yep, it's coming through on my end.
All right, I've emailed this document over to you just before the call started. So it's just a doc that's, you know, selling the DISC when you don't have a DISC. And so basically it goes through a background of DISC and the 4 core dimensions for a primer for people that want to refresh up on it. So you can share this with everybody, but you get down to these tells. And so as you're interacting with a prospect, we have found a great benefit in understanding what their DISC style might be. Now, if we can figure out how to get them to take one, well, that's fantastic. You know, like, hey, here's a free profile. It'll help me make sure I'm understanding and communicating what your sales preferences are and things. Great, we can try that. Haven't seen a ton of success getting a prospect to take a DISC plus, DISC and values. But here's some of the tells, you know. Oh, if we can, we're golden.
Yeah. Hey, before you come to this consult, would you please take this personality profile quiz? That's a new level. Yeah,
it's all right. It's going to help me understand how to communicate better with you. Sure. But you can see some of the tells in the conversation. You can even do this over the phone. You know? They're more straightforward. The D's are going to be more straightforward. They're going to be very upfront. They're not going to start that conversation with, hi, how are you? And where are you? And what's the weather like? And, you know, that sounds a lot more like a hi. D's are straight up, they're confident, they're secure, they're comfortable speaking out. They don't mind interrupting you and saying, yeah, I tell you what, well, let's skip to the next stop.
So me even saying, and first interrupting you here, but me even saying like, I'm going to interrupt you a lot, that already tells you that I'm a high D, doesn't it?
If I'm paying attention, you know, if there's a concept to keep in mind here, it's you need DISC radar. Now, I can't get them to take the profile. And the same thing's true when I'm managing people, but I've most likely got their assessment. You know, if they're in the organization, I can get the assessment, I can look at them. But what I thought was interesting, given the times and where people are very interested in continuing to drive sales, this is an appropriate time to talk about this. You know, you can listen. You're absolutely right. Put your radar on Don't think about yourself. Don't think about your objectives in the sale. Pay 100% hyper-focused attention on the individual, on the prospect in this case. And yes, I could stop and say, hey, you know what? They're sounding more like a D. They're not big believers in data. They're not interested in the small details. You can ask, by listening to the questions they're asking, you'll hear people say things like that. Look, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, just big picture. If I hear that, I know I'm not talking to a high C. I'm probably not talking to a high S. It's just very, very unlikely. And I can do this within minutes of having a conversation with somebody. If I'm really listening, it takes practice. Some of the tells, they're in a rush, they're easily distracted, they're hurried impatience, they can be perceived as being aggressive. Again, share this with everybody. They've got this document.
Let me say this. I'm going to interrupt again because I'm a high D. If you go to Leads Geeks and watch some of the videos that our ISA team has produced over the last couple of years, you're going to see that they will field these calls and they will respond to these clients. And when we have them recap, they have to be able to say, first off, you need to mirror and match that person, right? If you're talking to a D, you can be a D. If you're acting as an S to a D, you're just upsetting that D. And vice versa, of course. But in our Leads Geeks videos, and you'll find that on Facebook, you'll see and understand that it is that person's job to identify who they're talking with and then immediately start to mirror that and speak in the same profane way or soft way or super social way. Your job is not to be a lion. Your job is to be a chameleon when it comes to the disc.
Great way to put it. And that's good sales. Okay. Prospects don't come to us. We go to them. And now you talk about adaptation, or we just did. That's okay. In disc, everybody has some adaptation. And the adaptation is 20 points. No problem. Even up to 30 points. Probably not something I would get worried about from a coaching standpoint. So salespeople have to do this. They have to be able to say, hey, I'm going to slow down my D. I'm going to increase my C. I'm going to talk with more detail. And you can start to prep for a scenario for each of these four. Because if I'm listening and the radar's out there, I can tell the high I's. Very talkative, sunny, open, energetic, socially expressive. They're seeking approval. These are the tells that I can hear within minutes just on a phone call. If you're face to face with somebody 6 feet away for the next couple of weeks, then I can see their presence. I can read the body language a little bit of just how confident are they or how quiet are they. I'll show you another doc here.
And as you're doing that, I want to just share with you something that we created because we believe in this so much, Jay. Of understanding the disc and understanding what it means for our clients and our team members, is we created this role-playing game. In it, we have 3 different cards that exist. And these 3 cards, I don't know if it's showing up on the screen here, but we have a scenario, a role details, and a personality. There, that should show. Thank you. So we have these 3 different cards, and the personality card, these are our disc cards. Unfortunately, we don't own discs, so we can't just put on there the person's a DI and that sort. But let me ask you, Jay, the definition of this person is they're a pessimist, they're dominant, and they're distractible. Who are we referring to on the disc profile?
Pessimist, dominant, and what?
Distractible.
Sounds like a D or an I.
It's probably a D
and
because
an I probably, but
yeah.
it's D for
well,
sure.
I don't think the I would be the pessimist. I think it's probably a DC or a D, right?
Yeah, eyes are very distractible, so it depends on how you're looking at the profile.
Yeah. Oh, true story. So again, it's left, and we took some of these descriptive words that you talked about. We have this on our Hatch coaching site available for sale, but this isn't a sales pitch. This is just a tool because, again, I need to emphasize how important this is for people to master this disc, both of yourself and of your clients. Now, I told you I was going to interrupt, and I'm done for the next 30 seconds. So back to you.
That's fine. I'm just as good at it. So here's the comedy side of this. So this is an old friend of mine. And yes, these were shot a long time ago. But it's a PhD friend, and he basically put these together as a way of explaining if I'm physically in touch with somebody too. You know, this is the high D. You know, his character here is Bill Bottom Line, but it's to the point. Multitasking, competitive, demanding, you know, serious. Just look at the expression on the face. High eyes. You know, his character here became disorganized Joe Bag of Donuts. It makes me think of WKRP in Cincinnati, the old show. You know, books on selling, no organization, just carefree, very emotional. The high S's, you know, the steady Eddies, super friendly, easygoing, sociable, steady. And of course, the high C's, you know, nothing out of place, no aesthetically pleasing decorations, you know, everything's perfect. So when you
that
look
is
at,
not me, by the way. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. This is probably more like my desk here. Somebody said to me once, you know, the sign of a neat, an orderly desk is an orderly mind, or something like that. A messy desk is a messy mind. And I said, well, what's the sign of an empty desk? It was a high C that told
It's a
me
high
that.
C. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you've got all four of these. And the key is, going back to the other document, you want to start paying attention to them. Okay. Get practice, and you'll be surprised that very quickly you can decide, are they a D and an I at least? Just break it into two. You know, are they at least a D and an I, or an S and a C? It's not nearly as accurate as the assessment, but if I know they're a DI, then I can work with that. And I'm going to make people dizzy for sharing around like I am, but it's because this is the model for DISC. You know, how it's these two axes that Dr. Marston at Harvard put together. You know, how much more extroverted or introverted is the individual, versus do they view the world in a more favorable light or unfavorable light? And that's what creates the four quadrants. So you can see that these two share by being above the line. They're more extroverted. Okay? The D is on the left because they tend to view the world in a little bit more closed off, unfavorable way, but they're both still extroverted. They're both more outgoing and open. And the C and the S, they're on the bottom side of that. So they share in common a more guarded approach, a softer, slower pace, you know, that type of thing. If you split it right and left, you can tell the I's and S's are sharing in the same aspect of they're both seeing the world in a more favorable light. But if I can even just in my studying of the person's tells and their behavior, put them into a D and an I on top, or an S and a C on the bottom, then what that does is allow me to treat them very differently in my sale.
Let
So you
me
can go
let me
through the
stay on
doc.
that, Jay. If you would go back to that last visual, because it's an important one. And again, yeah, we'll make people dizzy, but that's okay.
That's all right.
Uh, how common is it for a D and an S to show up as high on someone's profile, or invertly a C and an I? So that's question number one. And question number two
Super
is
rare.
what percent of people are each of these four quadrants?
So the first one is extremely rare. And so I think my cursor shows when I'm sharing like this.
Yeah, I'm seeing it.
So, you know, it's because they're the opposite of each other. You know? So you'll find ISs, SCs, you'll find CDs and DIs. But yeah, going crosswise like that at a 45, very, very difficult to find, very unusual. What percentage? So S is absolutely the most dominant percentage in the United States. And this is pretty true of Western Europe as well. So as much as 45 to 50%. I is next, followed by C, ending with pure D, down into probably 10%. Now, again, I'm perpetuating a myth that a lot of people mistakenly do, which is, hey, are you a high D? Are you a high S? You know, so that percentage of D being first and most dominant is about 10%, and S being the highest, most dominant or powerful is about 50%. But we have to remember that, you know, it's all of them. And I think I've got a stat on this one, actually. Everybody hopefully took their, yeah, there we go.
Oh, there you go.
So S is 45 to 50%. You'll see similar stats for the I's and the C's, and then D's least likely to run into. So this is something to think about. If I'm a high DI, now, not that we've ever seen any salespeople or any of these team leaders that are listening are high DIs. I mean, that's just, yeah, no, right. About 90-something% of you are.
Yeah.
If I'm not thinking about that chameleon aspect, what's this do to my sales? The odds are, if I bump into Joe or Jane on the street and they're my prospect and I want to sell to them, and I'm not thinking about adapting and mirroring them, I'm pretty good statistical odds that I'm the oddball 10%er that isn't who I'm talking to. And I come at them like a train. I'm like, hey, how you doing? What you doing? What's going on? Hey, you know what? We can do this. You want to do it right now? Let's do it right now. Come on, sign the papers. S is, I call an S the 3-touch sale. A lady in Georgia said it best one time years back. She goes, let me sit with it a while. And it was her high S way of saying, this is new. I need to become comfortable with it. I need to think about it. So I call S's the 3-touch sale, because I have to first have the discussion with them. And that's just the first one. And I can put something in their head, an idea. I'm not going to get them to jump and close right then. Now I'm a high D. So if I'm selling to a D, it's like brand new idea, squeeze the trigger, let's go. The high S, I'm going to have a second talk with, most likely, explain things more, answer more questions, give more reassurance. And then possibly on the 3rd touch, I might be able to get something closed. I might be able to get movement, you know, and I'm just illustrating here. It's not always perfect 3s, but that's the intent and that's the idea. And what I should probably do is I'm just going to share the whole screen so people don't need as much motion sickness medicine. So think about the connection and the persuasion cycle of DISs and Cs as well. So from a sales standpoint, Ds are probably the easiest sale. You know, we developed a lot of this stuff many years back. A large client wanted to tie this into their Salesforce data and their calling prospects. And so I flew out and put together a program where we wrote up different scripts for each of the types. And so they were giving away the disc for free, but then unbeknownst to the individuals that took it, the salespeople were calling them and looking at their account or their names as a lead in their Salesforce. And they saw they were getting ready to call Mrs. Smith, who happened to be a 93S and a 12D. And when they got on the phone with Mrs. Smith and the emails, they had a very different approach, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But you got Ds are really fast and easy to make a sale. You're either going to make it or you're not going to make it. But there's an old saying in sales, the best thing you can tell a salesperson is yes, but the second best thing you can tell them is no, as long as you do it quickly. Because I'm fine if it's not going to be a sale. I mean, I'll throw up about it later, but at least if I know it fast, I can move on to other prospects. I's are second easiest, but they take a little longer. It's more conversational. They're not as decisive. Pure S's, slower still. Okay, the 3-touch. Got to reassure them, got to reinforce them. And then the hardest, most times, are the C's, because they'll tend to share S traits, but with a perfectionistic slant that requires even more data, more proof, and more facts.
So let me give a real life example here. And Jay, there's a question of, can you share the slides? If you email those to me, we'll make sure to get those to all of our attendees. So we'll do that afterwards. Absolutely. Here. So thanks for that request, Ricardo. I'm a DI, I'm a 99D, I'm a 99I. My wife is as S and as C as it comes. Just total polar opposites. And it's why we married women much cooler than us, Jay. I remember furniture shopping with my wife right after we got married. And we walked into the furniture store and she said, Eric, what do you think about this? And I'm like, awesome, let's get it. Like, it was that easy for me. Sweet, looks good. Yeah, that's the color you like. Perfect, I'm happy to. We shopped that day, the next day, and the next weekend. And we ended up settling on something that took 20 hours, I feel. Maybe it was like 5, but it felt like 20 hours to make the decision. I was in pure hell. And yet, had I strong-armed the decision as a D, I would have completely disrupted my wife's thought process, and she would have second-guessed and questioned that furniture for forever.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
it's just so important to understand what you are, but also who that person is that you're working with.
So imagine you put that into a work context. If
Mhm.
I am constantly having to or not remember that I'm dealing with a support person or an ops person who's probably more dominant S&C. That's what we want. I want somebody who's the opposite of me so they see the things I don't and enjoy doing the tasks I don't, and vice
Mhm.
versa. It creates a huge percentage. You talk about opposites attract. It's an old, uh, cliche. A huge percentage of the couples that I've profiled are the exact same thing. They're opposite. It's a yin and
Mhm.
a yang thing. Now, if I take that same context and turn it into a sale, and you're the salesperson, and you're probably working with an S and a C, your radar is up, you're seeing the tells that we'll share, and I'll go back to those in a minute, and you're thinking, yeah, most likely this is an S and a C,
Mhm.
but I'm just going to power through it. I'm going to say, look, I like this couch. I like the deal. I think this is the right thing to put for the house. This is the price. Let's go. And you just
Mhm.
shove it down their throats. If they're a prospect, they're not going to take it well. As a spouse, they're married. So I have to figure that out. But when I've got a transactional situation happening with a prospect, they don't have any obligation to stay around and put up with me.
Right.
And so, I come at them in the wrong direction. This is back to the mirroring that you talked about.
Yeah.
And we all have those same stories. Mine is a 7-column Excel sheet with 5 or 10, 11 different variables of hotels and vacations. And it's this
Mhm.
matrices of, well, this one has this feature and that price, and that one has this. And literally hours and hours building it, set down in front of me, and I went, that one.
Mhm.
And, didn't go over well.
Let me give one other example, and then I think I'm done interrupting for now. Um, it has been a really exciting thing in our world to take incredible notes in our CRM on all of our clients.
Mm.
So when our ISAs, our first point of contact with have not mets, are working with people, they'll make notes for the agent and for the future phone calls of this person we believe is a D, I, S, or C, or whichever combination. And so we have that information, and we also have that information on our team members. On each one of our desktops sits
Mm.
trading cards that give the disc and values of our team members. It gives their Myers-Briggs, it gives their love languages, and it gives their strengths profile.
Yeah,
Because we want to be able to know who that person is and how we can best connect with them. And
absolutely.
so I want to challenge you all listening right now to take really great notes. And the best example I can think of it is this: is I'm a big fan of The Office. And there's an episode where Michael Scott and Ryan and Pam open up the Michael Scott Paper Company. And Michael goes back into sales. And so he has a literal Rolodex in there, and he's calling these people and connecting with them. But then he asks a question that gets him his first client along the lines of, did your daughter ever end up making the JV team? So he had taken a great note on that person, showing that this information was vital to the future conversations he was going to have. Dwight ends up stealing his Rolodex and speaks with a guy and literally says, and how's your black wife, Karen? Like it was, so
Yeah.
obviously when you're dealing with things in a very literal sense, it's never going to work out. But when you're taking great notes on your people, especially of their disc profile and their values and the things that you're picking up on, the more you get into mastery of the disc, the better your notes will be, which leads you to future success. I'm done, Jay. Get back to you.
No, no. And again, this is, good to have this dialogue back and forth. And I love the interaction, more questions coming in from people that are listening as well. So back to a sales context again, which, and we're learning lessons about DISC in general. So you can use this in your hiring just as much, but we've done a lot of talks on hiring. And I just figured, today's day and age, let's help them, boost them a little bit on the sales side. This is the other way of looking at that. D's are the innovators. They're the ones who will take the new, the unproven, the not well super thought out ideas, the crazy off the cuff kind of let's go for it. You start moving into early adopters, I's come in there with the D's. So again, I'm new. I've never been in this field, in this city. I just got my license. I don't have 20 years of experience. Trying new things. Let's experiment with different ways to sell and different types of marketing. D's and I's are all over that. I's will carry on over into the S's into what starts to become the early majority. And by that, I mean, these are people that say, look, I'd rather feel safe if I'm in a majority. I don't want the first year of a car. You know, you've never made it before. They'll look at you and say, how long have you been selling real estate? I just got my license this year. They're not going to be comfortable with that. So know that you can't change the physics of reality, but you can say, look, here's what I've been doing in my careers. It's just a title change. You got to reinforce that they will be in the majority by working with you. Late majorities bring up the C's. And if there is a non-adopter, it's just the C's, you know, the ones that are like, nope, not going to do it. So again, as you go back to that model of if I can identify whether they're a D or an I, and here's kind of a shorthand model for everything that's in the document. So, you know, are they more extroverted or introverted? Right away, I can kind of get a feel for D and I or S and C. If they're friendly, and they're acting like a high I. If they're more extroverted but direct, then they're probably more like a D. Same thing here. If I'm feeling that they're a little bit more introverted, I have to pull them out, but they're cooperative, then they're probably more like an S. And if they're quiet and I got to pull them out, but they're much more analytical and factual, they're probably a C. So a little graphic here for you to kind of remember that. And same things reinforcing what I was talking about here, the buying tendencies. You know, they're going to use logic in their decisions. So to a greater extent, those are the C's going all the way down. D's actually before the I's, because I's don't use logic in their decision making.
I feel like you are calling me out right now in front of everyone.
It's feelings, you know,
it's emotion,
even less so than, absolutely. Tendency to trust new people, I's are in front, C's at the end. Quick buying, D, I, S, and C, the order stays same there. And then tendency to be loyal, S's first. You know, they're difficult to say, look, switch and this is loyal to things and people. So even in the face of practical evidence that says otherwise, a high S is going to continue to work with that company that they've been selling and buying through. They're going to be difficult to pull away from what's always been the way they've done it, or even in constructs. This is the way they've always believed a house should be sold or the price should be made, or convincing them to adopt a new idea is also slow and difficult.
Jay, there's a glaring, stay on that for a second, because there's a glaring issue in our business. You said that the majority of the world are S's followed by C's, correct?
C's and I's are fairly tied, close to about 30%, 25, 30%.
But take a look there where it says tendency to be loyal to brand. S's and C's are the highest. That means that we as realtors and as business owners should have the greatest chance to retain and to get referrals from, and yet we suck at it. Why do we suck at it, Jay?
What would you say the majority of the people that are not doing that are? And I'm highlighting the D, so I just, there's the answer.
Yeah.
D's and I's, you got to think like the S's and the C's.
Yeah.
D's and I's will go out and find new people. They're not worried about experimentation and trying new things. Actually, will get bored easily sitting doing the same job. You don't find a whole lot of super high D's in the post truck that the U.S. Postal Service truck that just drove past my house. You're very unlikely to find a super high D that's going to do the same thing every day for 20 years.
Yeah.
But that impetus, that creativeness, that energy, that it's undercutting the success because they don't stop to say, what is my customer like? And if the customer is mostly, majority was, the odds are they're a high S, then I need to think like them, get in their head and say, what can you do to help give me referrals? How to treat me like family and make sure that I'm going back to them. And
hey, let's look to wrap maybe in the next 10 minutes or so we can honor people's time. What are some key things we need to be learning and taking away from you right now, Jay?
So when you're selling, we can walk through these real quickly, and I've got them in there as well. But when I'm selling, I think I've got a D or a D and an I, I'm okay to go ahead and try these approaches. So it'll be in both documents. The conversational style for the D is faster paced, closed answers, cool and distant. And when I'm selling to them, I got to be practical, avoid theory, highlight the opportunities for change, adventure, competition. avoid overwhelming emotion. They don't want to get into that. Be quick, be to the point. But watch how these things shift. I go to sell to a high I. I'm avoiding challenging them personally. I can't be too aggressive, and I can't close or push too hard. I've got to stay very enthusiastic and expressive. And as I'm walking through these, imagine you try this on the wrong style. I'm not saying you're going to get killed if you accidentally identify somebody wrong when you're looking for their tells. But if you don't know this, what do? Do you have a universal approach? So that's what we normally say. This is the style with which I sell, and I do it universally to everybody. So if let's say you were lucky enough and your way that you approach and pitch and sell does work with high S's, not as likely, because usually it's a high D that's developing the sales approach and the script and the style. But if that's fine, okay, cool. The odds are the majority of the people you try to sell to, it might resonate with. But if I'm selling to an S and I or a D or a C and I or a D, imagine how pissed off they're going to be. I get the D in front of me and I'm like, how you doing, buddy? Hey, you know what? I heard a great joke this morning. Oh my God, tell me your life story. And they're going to be like, dude, shut up. What are you doing? What do you need? Can we get done? I got 3 more calls to make. So if I take the wrong approach, it's why it's usually very ineffective. Look at the S's. Can you imagine if I'm a high D and I approach them and I'm not doing any of these? I don't stop to think that I need to reinsure them and reduce their risk. When you say to a high DI, hey, you know what? Maybe there's a little risk, but they don't care. They're like, sure, I like it. I don't mind risk. Might be a little exciting, actually. I don't think that I need to remember to do this when I'm talking to a high S, but I do. I need to give them more structure than I would ever want. I get a little nauseous talking about this step-by-step detailed process, but they need it. So it's up to me to make sure that, you're, like you said, mirroring them and acting like the chameleon. And the C's, I can't make a statement without data. An old TV show, just the facts, man. Nothing but the facts. I sure as heck better not have typos when I send them an email. Right? They literally will look at that and go, why would I give you my house that's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and put that in your hands when you can't even spell in the last email you sent me? D's wouldn't even notice it, let alone if you pointed it out to them, care, or I's. But if you do that with a high C, you literally are dead. If they ask you a question about anything to do with the stats, what are the comps around here? What do you think? And you go, I don't know. Womp, womp. I mean, you just really lost faith with them. And you got to be organized. You got to be logical. It's a tough sale. I can't say, hey, I'll get back to you sometime this week. They're usually going to go, okay, when? You know how hard that is. I'll call you at 2:00 on Wednesday. And the way the day goes, having that schedule like that just doesn't hold up. But I better call them at 2:00 on Wednesday if I told them I was going to call them at 2:00 on Wednesday.
Jay, one of my favorite analogies for the DISC profile is a situation where you're maybe at an office building or a hotel room and everyone is looking to get into the elevator. And so a high D pushes the button, even though it's already been pushed. The I talks to everyone on the elevator, even if they haven't been drinking. The S maybe waits to get on that elevator because it looks like there's enough people already going on. And the C will calculate everybody's body weight and see if the elevator is destined to fall to its impending doom.
Yep.
And that's always been my favorite example. What's your favorite example of putting it in layman's terms for a DISC?
We do a great exercise. If your team's big enough, you can do the 4-corner exercise.
Okay.
And you put the DISs and C's into the individual corners and just come up with any set of tasks. I mean, like mental tasks. Hey, tell everybody here on this team what's so great about your corner. And everybody has 2 minutes to do it. But what happens is you watch the way they go about doing it, because at the end of 2 minutes, the D's already had the answer a minute in and are probably checking emails. The I's haven't gotten an answer. They haven't even gotten to the first discussion of it because they're just too busy talking about everything that's happened lately. The S's, another example of question is you say, pick a leader in your group to represent and speak for the team. And you'll see the same thing. D's just went, I'll do it. Well, 3 of them said, I'll do it. And they fought over it for 2 minutes. I's didn't pick somebody. S's asked for volunteers, and C's literally calculated a formula that said, well, you've got the most experience, and you've done this more. So about 40% more. So you're going to speak for us. But it doesn't matter what you ask them. It really doesn't matter. When I do it on the screen, I'll put a typo in and I won't put enough instructions. And you'll find the S's and the C's don't finish it in a minute or two because they're saying, well, you didn't tell us exactly what to do. D's and I's just made up the rest of the missing information. And the C's will be the first to go, hey, you spelled that incorrectly, right?
Boy, you just covered a big aha, and maybe we'll wrap with this here, Jay. If most of our admin are S's and C's, right? Most of our salespeople are D's and I's. Most of our admin are S's and C's. Is that accurate with how you see it?
Yeah, it's a pretty broad statement,
Yeah.
But fair.
But if our admin are looking for specificity and exactness when we give orders or give projects, quite often we do what's called the plop and drop. And that is, I'm a high D, I have a great idea, and I drop it on the team without enough explanation, understanding, and time vested in it. And we wonder why we bash our heads against the walls. We think, well, we hired terrible people. No, we were a terrible communicator and a terrible leader in that situation.
Yeah, I think the best thing for those is to have that communication where you say, look, there's natural points where I'm going to irritate the hell out of you. And it's vice versa. So as long as in literally onboarding and coaching those people, you say, this is my natural tendencies. And when I drop that in your desk like that, don't think that, oh, what, he's so, inaccurate and he didn't flesh out all the details. They have to understand that's why it's now passing to them in this manufacturing process. You took the first mile and they're taking the last mile. And then you have to give them time for that. And in hiring, we see people that don't have a structured hiring process. They are very unlikely to hire that person because without thinking about it, it's underneath the surface. Drastically different personalities oftentimes create most interpersonal conflict. And so a high D team leader says, I like this person a lot. Well, more often than not, they like them because their personalities are similar. They're high D's and I's too. So they got along really well. They made sense. They like the same kind of things. So they go, I like that person a lot better because the person who was the super analytical, slow-paced, questioning, they in the interview, they go, they didn't resonate as much with me. Well, it ain't about resonance, because you hire the DI to do the transaction coordination. They're going to suck at it and they're going to quit, or you're going to have to let them go. It's kind of a race as to which one happens first.
Jay, you are a gift, man. Give us any final thoughts or things that we need to walk with here as we go about our day.
Put your radar on. Once you start doing it, you won't be able to stop. You'll be standing in the grocery store and just, you'll be profiling people. And I apologize here, record this piece, put it away, and bring it back out in 10 years so I don't have to do it again. I'm sorry. Okay, because once you open this door in your mind and you start thinking about people that you interact with, and the first things you're doing is trying to understand what are the tells that I'm seeing, you literally will probably never be able to turn it off. Now, it can benefit you in many ways, but even just last month, I found myself thinking in my head, I heard the voice going out, going, oh yeah, that's definitely I see. It was irrelevant, it didn't matter. And I'm like, stop. But once you change that perspective, you'll do it and you'll get really good at it. And I think you'll get really good at it fast.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a skill worth practicing. It's one of the reasons why we created our role-playing game. It's one of the reasons why you're one of my favorite people in this world, is because, man, you've given us in this 45-minute period here a toolbox and an arsenal of things that we can do. So thank you, Jay. I sure appreciate you, man.
Love you guys. Love being around with you and everything you do. So thank you.
All right, folks, we're going to wrap. Watch your email. You should get a recording of this, as well as we'll send out Jay's slideshow and his other Word document. So Jay, thank you, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. God bless you, and go wash your hands.
Be good.